Alright, hey, how's it going? Hopefully, I'm actually live this time. Because I just did this whole talk to myself. Because I didn't hit the go live button because I'm very new to streaming on YouTube. I did do another stream before, but I guess I must have accidentally hit go live. Because I thought that, like, once I started streaming, sending the signal, then it would just start automatically, and it didn't. But that's okay because I got a practice round and I had so much fun that I'm going to go ahead and do this talk again and maybe a little bit more refined and try to shove it into a smaller time frame because I have to get to work at 10 o'clock, which is at 8. Almost 8 o'clock right now, and I'm very sorry because I said that the stream would start at 6 o'clock, and I really did start the stream at 6, but just to an audience of just me, so. Yeah. Alright, so we're going to get started right away. I'm trying to make up some time. So basically the story here is that I initially wanted my very first Blackboard vlog stream to be a programming one, because that's what I'm familiar with. Although I am a janitor now, at one point in the past I was a software engineer, so I know something about it. And I figured I should at least once in a while talk about some shit I actually know something about, because boy, let me tell you what, we're going to talk about some stuff today that I actually really have no probably business talking about. Aside from the fact that I think it's fascinating and cool. Um, and because I fancy myself some kind of silly pseudo-intellectual fool. In either case, I was looking through the bookcase for some stuff aside from programming to talk about because I don't really want to just be a programming only channel. As a matter of fact, I really don't want to be that. I did find a book that I did want to read, and I still do. I think it'll be fascinating. Is this Resource Wars book, and basically the story on this bad boy is that it was a book. Get this, it was written like basically like a couple of months before 9/11, and the whole premise of the book is the new landscape of global conflict. Basically, what they thought war would look like in the next 20, 30 forthcoming years from a end of history, end of the 90s kind of standpoint. It's just fascinating because I would love to see do a comparison from like how this author thought things were going to shake out to how things actually did. I'm totally going to do that. I was about to do that and start working on like an outline, take some notes, but then I remembered that I got this book at the thrift store at the same time. And this is one I've been wanting to read for a long time. Because I grew up as a fucking nerd kid. But it's this one right here. A Brief History of Time by a very famous scientist, Stephen Hawking. Alright? Always wanted to read it. Never got a chance to. And then, like, the whole science nerd thing was more or less, like, in my life, just a passing fad. Roughly of equal kind of magnitude to, like, that one time I was into, like, it probably fits in between on the level there. It's, like, the phase that I was into, like, wrestling, and then probably science, weird, epic nerd for the win, fucking dudes, Newton and uh, Einstein and Gauss and Euler and pals, and then Dragon Ball Z, right? And then like uh, when I was like into sports and shit, so it's like kind of the level there from least significant to more significant. All of them fat, so and shit that I'm not into anymore. Well, being said, I never really got a chance to read the book, never did. And I think now that I have it, it'd be kind of fun to read. And I think what it'd be fun to do is because I'm not really going to be able to apprehend this book at a scientific kind of level, although I don't even think it's really meant for that. It appears to be a book that's more kind of for the layman. I don't see any mathematical um, equations in here, and in fact, um, It's like a lot of pictures in this book. A lot of stuff like this. Right? Most of the pages are pictures. Which I love. It's great, by the way. Hold on one second. I am just going to go back real quick. I know that it's a nervous habit, nervous to take thing, but I just did a whole hour and a half talk to myself. So I'm going to just real quick flip back to the YouTube page just to make sure it does say that I'm live, right? Okay. Yeah. This totally appears like I'm live. Looking at myself. Says that the stream is going. Says that the bitrate's not the greatest, but you know what? We can deal with that. Alright, enough meta bullshit. Back to the action. Anyway. So I'm not going to really be able to apprehend this at a scientific level because I suck at science. I suck at math. Alright at math. I mean, I was a software engineer, so I know enough math to get me in trouble. Like, probably could pass second year calculus. Probably couldn't pass diff-EQ. Like, maybe with some time. But, like, just like right now. No way. Probably couldn't even pass Calc 2, like, just right off the bat. But, like, if you gave me a math book in, like, a week, I could totally pass Calc 2. So, that kind of gives you an idea. But this, I'm not, like, using this... I'm not using quantum mechanics in my life for anything. Except for, like fuel for my weird philosophical, metaphysical, theological, cosmological kind of understanding of the world, right? And so I think what would be kind of fun to do would be to do a reading of this book, but not from like a scientific standpoint, but to kind of read this book with a philosophical bent, right? Because that's kind of the level that I can apprehend this book at. And it's kind of the level of like intrigue that I kind of have with this kind of material. And what I kind of want to do is before we even dive into the book at all, get into the whole book club aspect of it. I think what I'm going to do, and actually what I mean by I think is I already just fucking did this, is to spend a whole stream to just basically go over what my current understanding of the world is, my current cosmology, theology, philosophy, metaphysics is, how my very rudimentary troglodytic understanding of quantum mechanics kind of fits into that and justifies it. And then we read the book, and then afterwards we can kind of do a wrap-up episode stream, and then I can kind of see if any of this material for this book has kind of informed me additionally, changed my views, anything like that. So, yeah. Let's just dive in because I'm running short on time. I've already done this before, and I'm probably gonna fucking have laryngitis tomorrow. Be talking all day. But I'll probably boil it down and be a little bit less rambling this time around. I was actually commenting last time on how much I rambled, and look, I'm rambling right now. So, what I want to do real quick is just do an outline of what I'm going to go over. Hopefully this will keep me from rambling so much as I did last time, but also keep you guys and let you know where to skip forward to at the least, right? Kind of get an idea of what I'm going to be talking about. First things first, and I'm just going to put it on here because I put it on my, I already put it on the, on my notes, and so I'm just going to put it here so I can keep myself in line and the numbers correct. So I did an introduction. Okay. And then the second part is what I want to get into is just to start talking about like my understanding of quantum mechanics and kind of what that looks like. And so we'll talk about what the quantum world is, or at least what I think that means. And then what I would like to do is see how that kind of understanding, which more or less we're going to specifically be talking about the Copenhagen interpretation, which we'll talk about, how that actually implies, logically, idealism. Okay. Um, and how also I'm going to see that if I can try to make the claim that it also implies dualism, which specifically we're going to be talking about the kind of dualism that is the mind-body dualism, i.e. that the mind and the body are different stuff. Um, and then what I want to do is I want to make an attempt um, to rectify the mind and body. Basically, I want to try to address um, one really big counter argument to dualism. We'll go over that. And money. And then the last thing that I really want to go over is to kind of take a step back, look at things at a larger level, and I want to talk about the panpsyche. I think is probably what a lot of people might term that kind of idea, or pan consciousness. I want to talk about those notions. Talk about things like not just resurrection, but particular kind of like Boltzmann um, resurrection kind of notion. We'll talk about what that is, and then we'll wrap things up. And Jesus Christ, conclusion. I'm going to talk about some pages that we can work on, or that we'll read for next stream. So I didn't do this last time, but let's do this. And you'll have to forgive me as I learn how to use this tool better, but I'm gonna figure it out. So pretty sure I can do this. Just kind of keep that there in the corner. Nice. Okay. Okay. So, we're done with the introduction. Let's talk about the quantum world. So, basically, what I mean by that is the Copenhagen interpretation. Now, what is that? Well, more or less, and this is going to sound like some wizardy shit, but just hear me out. Basically, what the Copenhagen interpretation says, that, like any, like the universe, or any kind of subset of this system of the universe, that its state, like the material state, like where the atoms are, all that other good shit, the state of the world is, strangely enough, it's actually indeterminate until it's observed. Sounds crazy, right? But it's only when observation occurs that a concrete instantiation of any particular state happens, right? Which sounds fucking crazy. But let's talk more about it. So the way that usually you get sold into this kind of this idea is through the old thought experiment, the Schrodinger's cat, which is a really fucking... The reason that it's a thought experiment, aside from it being physically impossible for it to be done, because you would need like a perfect vacuum or whatever. It's also very unethical. But here it goes. Basically, you have like a box, like a closed system, right? And in there you have a kitty cat. Kitty. And over some kind of predefined amount of time, so let's say like an hour, you have a coin flip chance that the cat's dead through some kind of fucked up misfortune, some kind of trap. I don't know. You'll hear different books kind of word this differently. It's like a cyanide pill or something that's attached to some crazy ass device, or it's like, oh, it reads the spin of a atom and then it releases a toxic gas or some shit, or maybe it's like an electroshocker. I don't fucking know. A gun attached to a cartoon hand. I don't know. Something will either kill the cat or not kill the cat, and there's a 50% chance after this amount of time. And the thought experiment is you ask some person outside of the system, what is the fate of the cat? And the argument is that you're supposed to kind of conclude is that the question is nonsense. It's indeterminate, it's nonsensical, right? And that the cat actually isn't dead or alive. It's not one or the other. It's actually in a superposition of both. What I mean by superposition is that it exists in this kind of state where it has a probability of it, when it is realized, of it being in a particular state, but it's not actually in one of those states until the coin isn't flipped. The dice are chosen, but they're not thrown, right? Which is strange and crazy, right? And it's an insane thought experiment, and you couldn't actually ever... One, you can't carry it out for multiple reasons, right? One, there's a leaky box. It's going to leak some kind of thing. You shoot the fucking gun. You're going to hear the gun, right? Or you'll hear the cat yelp as it dies. So sad. But also, you can't... How are you going to verify that the cat is in some kind of state or not? This is a thought experiment. But there is a real life experiment, though, that we can talk about that does give us plenty of evidence to make our further crazy ass claims. Real life experiment. Here we go. This is empirically proven stuff. This is called the double slit experiment, and I do want to point out that in the scientific canon, both the Schrodinger's cat and the double split experiment are just basically they're very famous in that canon, right? So I would posit that there's probably a 95% or more chance that this book covers both of those things. So I'm going to remark on that, because if they don't talk about one of these, one or both of these, it's crazy. Anyway. And also bear with me here on this stuff, because I'm not a scientist. I don't really know what I'm talking about. Most of the stuff was just stuff that I read back in the day. The physics part of this is actually probably the stuff that I'm the worst about, so just bear with me. But I do know enough to actually to kind of have a vague idea of what's going on. Double slit experiment. You have some kind of light source. Very importantly, it's polarized light. It's a laser. And you have some kind of photographic plate of some kind. So something with a photosensitive film on it. And then in front of that you have some kind of screen. And in that screen you've got 2 slits in there. And the experiment is you turn on the light ray and you see what happens, right? And the thing that you would presume to happen just with our human notion of, what is sensible, you would imagine that the light shoots rays out, and most of these rays strike the film and are stopped. But some of them, at the right angle, pass through these apertures here, these slits, to make it through and to strike the photographic film, such that when you develop it later, then you would find that there are 2 really distinct bands. Well, not bands. Two. You see the slits. They're right there. Right? And in the first iteration of the experiment, you actually see that. Very importantly, though, between the light source and the film is you have a detector that you read the state of the light. You observe it, right? You force that decoupling. You look inside of Schrodinger's box, and the reason that it behaves like this, because we're looking at the system here. The light chooses a destiny, right? You decompose this light into discrete photons that you can then go, well, I know that it went through the slit, and so it made these stripes, these two lines here, and you can run this experiment and know this to be true. I don't know what this apparatus is. It's some kind of photovoltaic cell of some kind. And I don't recall where in the configuration here this happens. I can't recall if it has to happen right here before the slit, if you look at it after. But the important part is that at some point here before this part where it actually strikes, before that you look at the light. In the other version of this experiment, we run the exact same thing, and we just don't have this. Just take this part away, right? So we run the experiment, and strangely enough, you do not get the same output. When you look at it this time, what you get is you don't get 2 lines, you get a bunch of lines, you get bands. And the bands are not really sharp, they're hazy, and they range from being, really bright to really dark, to black, then all the way up to full brightness again in a repeating kind of, repeating bands, right? It's called a Moire pattern, or Moire pattern. It's one of those words you see all the time. Then when you hear it, you never hear it, you don't know how to actually pronounce it. This is one of those. So, and why does it do that? Well, because the observation hasn't happened yet. The light never gets resolved into discrete packets, into discrete photons where you actually know where it is as a point in space. It's not resolved, it's not instantiated. So what it is it's still a wave of probabilities. And so what happens is that this light doesn't act like photons, it doesn't act particle-like, it acts wave-like. And the reason that you get these bands is because you just imagine it's analogous to like if you had a seawall and you had two breaks in the seawall. Well, the waves coming through the breaks in those seawalls are going to emanate forth like this, right? Like waves do. So they're coming forth like this. And those bands are where these nodes are, the bright spots where these waves, where the crests meet and their amplitude doubles or by some fraction increase. And these dark spots are the opposite, where the troughs here in the middle correlate to cancel each other completely and to leave this spot completely black. And what this wave is actually what it is a representation. It's actually the mapping of the probability that when you resolve a particular proton that it might be in one of these positions. Now the crazy thing is that this sounds just as hypothetical as this, but this double slit experiment is actually it's an experiment. It's not a thought experiment. It's real life. You can do this and empirically collect the evidence that I just talked about here and see the Moir pattern and see the two lines when you configure it as such. This is real life. So this seems to prove that this act of observation, this putting some kind of apparatus here to detect, to observe the light, causes it to instantiate into particles, right? And this configuration of just a single particle can be extended to the system as a whole, right? Because you can add waves, and what you just get is a resultant wave. You get a super wave. It's just built out of the constituent waves, right? That's how you do like Fourier transforms and stuff like that. Right? That's how we make stuff like where you can noise cancel. So that's kind of the quantum world, right? That's how stuff works in the small and in the large too. That basically, just boiling this down to the nitty gritty, the world doesn't actually take form until you look at it. The act of looking precedes, takes primacy over the stuff. So what does that mean? What does this Copenhagen interpretation imply? Well, and this, just what I said, it seems to imply that there is some level of primacy there, causation, wherein, kind of backwardsly, the thing existing doesn't cause the observation to be possible, but what happens is the observation causes the manifestation of the matter to be possible. What's that called? Well, it's called idealism. And the way that I kind of think of idealism, because it's not just like anything. Idealism is not. Let's do this. Idealism is not just a black and white thing that you just believe or don't believe. It doesn't have one definition. It's a it's a what the fuck is that? It is a gradient. So the better way to plot this, it's funny because it's in the Western world we just have this obsession with like left-right dichotomy and like number line kind of stuff. Maybe sometime we expand that to that weird fucking grid, the authoritarian left-right. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, there's really obsessed with that kind of dichotomy here in the U.S., and so we'll kind of use that left-right kind of dichotomy. So, kind of the way that I think of idealism, and you have a line, right? You have your left-right, kind of like you do with politics, but instead of liberalism and conservatism, or left and right, socialism, Marxism, and fascism, or whatever the fuck. You have, on the right here, we'll put materialism. Again, that's just like the idea that the most important stuff in the world is matter. It's stuff. It's atoms. So it's things out there. And then there's idealism, which means that the most important stuff in the world, prime thing, is ideas. Ideas and minds. So, like, over here, I guess, I don't know, probably have, like, dudes like, I don't know, like, fucking Peter Thiel or something like that. Elon Musk. Any dudes that think, like, oh, well, basically the people that are, like, these tech dudes that are like, well, someday I'll be able to put the computer in me, and then maybe someday I'll be able to put me in the computer. Is basically kind of what these guys are going for. That's like it's the actual like purpose of the singularity or whatever the fuck these dudes are kind of working for. Is like that's we're trying to like cheat death, but that's a whole another story here for another day. In either case, these materials guys are like the guys that think that like the whole world, all the minds are like made out of stuff. It's all matter. It's the most important stuff, and so like that's why like you can make AI and make other stuff is because like it's just all just like wires and shit, even if the wires happen to be made out of like goo or whatever. And then on the other end you have idealism, and this is on a gradient. So at the very end here, the most extreme form of it, you have guys like Berkeley, George Berkeley, and Berkeley. And Berkeley espoused a type of idealism called subjective idealism, which basically says that not only are ideas more important, ideas are the only fucking thing. There isn't any other stuff. The only thing, or I don't necessarily know, I don't know enough about it to know that he asserts that that is for sure the only stuff, but at the least, Berkeley would say, or at least a subjective realist would say, that you can't prove that there is anything more in the world than ideas. And I'm sure a lot of them probably think that they probably, I don't know. I don't know how much of a hard realism kind of, or not realism, excuse me, so just subjective realism, subjective idealism, sorry. Whoops. Anyway, I don't know how much that really hardline idealism actually works. It's kind of just a thing in theory, but like, at least the version of it where like yes you in your reasoning concede that like I can't have any kind of line of argument that results in me conceding that matter exists in any kind of way, shape, or form. Like okay, I guess I can kind of see that, but that's your really extreme version. It's no matter, all ideas and no matter. And then you have like the more centrist version, the more centrist take on there, and this is what I kind of think of as like the Kantian version. And we're going to talk about Kant here a little bit more. But I'm going to have to delete the slide and clear things out. But before I do, just kind of real briefly outline his deal is that, like, basically Kant kind of thought that, like, okay, well, matter is real. I concede that matter is definitely real. And even more so, matter is actually, like, kind of the more real thing, actually. It's actually the real shit out there, which you would think would make him a materialist, but the thing that actually makes him an idealist is that he says, like, yes, the prime thing is material stuff, but we don't ever see that material stuff because the world that we inhabit in our brains is always the ideal stuff. It's always made out of ideas. We don't ever, like, apprehend anything more than our own ideas of the world out there. So, like, the fact that a world independent of our mind exists is, like, immaterial. It doesn't even fucking matter. So it is materialist in a sense that it's like, yeah, the way that the real world is out there, there's, like, real life shit out there. We just can't do anything with it. And this would be like epistemological idealism, which is basically the idealism of, like, yeah, it's, like, all in the mind or whatever. Pretty sure. And by the way, when I use these terms, just keep in mind, I'm a janitor. I took some philosophy classes in college, but I'm not a professor, so I might be using these terms incorrectly. And a lot of these, and I'll try to point these out when these are the case, a lot of these are just shit that I've termed myself or coined myself or that make sense to me. So they might not even be a real thing. Oh, okay. So you have those kind of two versions. And then what I'm going to try to argue for is kind of like this middle ground here. Kind of the center of these two. Because I certainly do think that materials exist. My flavor is the flavor where, yes, I will concede that materials do exist, but no, I don't concede that they are the prime thing. I don't actually consider that they're the secondary thing either. I'm going to present a version of this where matter and ideals are actually dual to each other. It's going to be a form of dualism that's analogous to the mind-body dualism. It's going to be the materialism, idealism dualism, I guess you could call it, but it's going to be basically where ideals and ideas and matter they're like a hand and glove. They're chicken and the egg. They are inextricable from each other. They are linked. They're opposites. They're up and down. Right? You can't have light without the dark. You can't have empty without the full, etc., etc. Right? So that's me. Yay. There I am. So, let's talk a little bit more about Kant. He's an interesting fellow. So, the way that Kant works, and the reason that I want to talk about this specifically is this special version of idealism that I subscribe to. It's, like, pretty similar to Kant's, so I guess we call it maybe. But I guess it's just like a stronger version of it, and it's kind of an inversion of it. I'm gonna call it the Kantian inversion. This is one of those completely made up terms, so it just works for me. And basically what this is like the way that Kant kind of envisions the world is that there's kind of two categories of stuff. Two worlds, actually, you could call them. So what you have is you have the noumenological. You have the noumenon and you have the phenomenon. So the noumenon is stuff as you have, like, things, real life, actual stuff as it exists in the real ass life world. Okay? You have matter. And the matter. This is matter. And this is the prime stuff. This is the real thing. This is what's real because it exists out there in the world. And it has properties and attributes and states and everything like that. That all being the case, though, none of that's all opaque to us because we live in the world of phenomenon, where everything that we can tell about this object, every kind of information we gather about it, um, just by the way that the world works and consciousness works, we gather it through our senses, right? Um, we taste it, we, um, you know, hear it, we smell it, we sense it, we perceive it and apprehend it through our sensory organs, right? And only after that point do we then come up with some kind of mental image of what this thing is. And so we perceive this object to be an apple, a red apple. It's delicious and whatever else have you. But the properties that we're perceiving, it's like it's a reduced version of the noumenon because we're not getting at the real thing. We're kind of just getting at this like lossy format of it. This kind of boiled down representation, right? So in the Kantian kind of classic Kantian world, then excuse me, the noumenon is kind of the greater of the two. The phenomenon is just kind of the shitty version we get to access through our grimy camera lenses and our bad haptic controllers and all this other shit, right? Now that's all immaterial of that this is lesser than the other because we only ever deal in the phenomenal world, so that there exists even a new phenomenal world doesn't matter. What does this significance? What does this even have significantly to us as humans in the real world? It doesn't. It doesn't. This could actually be any kind of configurative way, but we don't know. We only know what it looks like to us. But, and I do believe that that's the case, right? The thing that I really kind of differ about, and I don't know that Kant really even explicitly states it outright, but I feel like from what I have read of critique of pure reason and stuff like that, it really, yeah, it does appear to be the case that there is a primacy attached to the noumenological, right? That's the way things are, and you can even get that from his naming of things. This thing, this noumenon, this object of discourse here, this is what he calls um, um, it's called the ding, the ding on seek, which translates roughly to the thing in itself. And so, like, you can just see it coded in the language of itself that he uses. That like it's the way that it is. That's the prime way. Um, and the difference that I think is that the fact that you have to look at an object for it to exist, right? You have to break down the superposition into an eigenstate before it can be realized with your eyes, and you have to observe it. Then it can't be the case that the noumenological world is chief over the phenomenological world, right? There's no primacy here. I don't actually necessarily think the inverse either. I don't think it is the case that it is backwards. What it is that these are actually equal to me. I'm going to prove that here momentarily. But at the least here, I guess inversion would be wrong because inversion would imply that this is backwards, but I'll change my term for that. But It's kind of similar to comp here, but it's just changing kind of the importance of the noumenon, right? There is a thing that exists out there that is like a material manifestation. It's the thing that the eigenstate is. And yes, we might, like, if I have shitty eyesight, like, no, I'm not going to see it with the same clarity as somebody else that has better eyesight. Like, the resolution of the image is going to be less. I am perceiving less of that object. I have a phenomenological, I fucking can't say these words, world, and it is, like, less than yours, at least in that regard. But I think that calling it ding on seek, the thing in itself, is kind of wrong, because the thing in itself is supplicant to the viewer. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? Not that the viewer has any kind of stake in how the things are chosen. It's all random. It's always random. There's probabilities, but in the end, the universe throws a die and chooses. But and we can't explain. But ding on seek attaches some kind of inherentness to the noumenon, and there is no inherentness to it, because it is resultant of the act of observation. We're kind of dragging this into the dirt here, so let's kind of move on from that. So we have this idea that we're springing forth from these observations real life observations we've made about the double slit experiment, and that we know that materialization is actually an effect and not a cause. Why then is how do we get to dualism then? I guess is if I just want to beg the question, because it's the next thing on my list. Having a hard way of segueing into this here. Basically, kind of what I want to talk about is, like, what if observation is the important thing? If what we're talking about is, if we're talking about there's only two fundamental operations in the universe, right? Two fundamental operations, and that is observation and existence, and everything is just one of those. And existence, we know that is just the decay of the superposition. Then what is... Tell me more about observation. What is it? Like, just definitionally from the term, like, what is it to observe, right? Observation presupposes kind of a, how do I do this? Hold on. And I like how whenever I start drawing this stuff, then my brain automatically turns off, and I can't talk to you more about actual stuff. That's okay. Sooner or later, I'll get better at this to where I can just do this without thinking about it. Hopefully. Okay, so, yeah, tell me more about observation. Well, observation kind of implies a couple of things. One, directionality, and two, borders. What do I mean by that? Well, like, and I guess by directionality, I also kind of mean by that specifically you have to have a point of observation, spatially. So what do I mean by all these things? One, directionality. Well, like, to observe, like, just by the definition of the word, it's like, you have to have some kind of directionality insofar as, like, I observe the thing, I am here, the target of observation is over there, and I am observing it. There's a remoteness to it. And in order to have remoteness, you have to have borders, right? Because there has to be a point where I stop and that thing begins, and there's some kind of medium between there that I observe through, right? Um, and likewise, there's like a observation. If I observe a thing over there, like where is there and where is here? There's a point of observation. There is a place in space, spatially, right? Um, so what does it mean to be spatially located? Um, well, according to Einstein and his relativity shit, like the universe, there's no absoluteness, right? There's no like origin point. There's no 0, 0 on the Cartesian plane of the universe, right? Because everything is relative. All of the shit's relative to each other. And so what that means is that there's no grid to tie you down to. The only way that you can have meaningful coordinates in space is to have matter, to be a thing, because there's no does that space is the dimension of matter, right? um there's no there's no coordinates outside of where the things can exist. There's no perfect vacuum, right? There's always some kind of low level energy state, because that's kind of the hum that all of the stuff, that's the low key, that's like the field, that's the field from which these particles are instantiated from. um but those are the only things that you can kind of base yourself around. If you don't have some kind of piece of matter to base yourself around, you're afloat in some kind of super miasma of, of wherever. And again, you can't resolve yourself to a place in space-time. This is arbitrary because there's no absoluteness. Everything is relative to something, and for it to be something, it is matter. So, if you need matter to have an observation point, and you need an observation point to observe, and you need to observe to have matter, this is a circle. This is all this begs this. So, which this begs this. Observation begs existence. Existence, it begs observation. It's all one big cycle. Which means that it's all one yin-yang. It's all one thing. One is inextricable from the other, and you can't pull it apart because, like, that doesn't even make sense anyway. What is up without down? What is hot without cold? Which means that the opposite of existence isn't nothing. It's not non-existence. The opposite of existence is observation. You have a thing that exists, and the dual of it is the thing which observes it existing. And without a thing to observe the thing existing, then there's no... it not only semantically doesn't even make sense for there not to be the thing to exist anyway. If there's nothing to observe it, it just can't be. It just can't be, because it's just, you can see it in the double slit experiment. In Schrodinger's cat, it doesn't, the thing, destinies aren't chosen until there's a thing to look at the destiny. Because why would there be? Right? So, what this means is that you have this kind of thing that's vacillating between these two states, and you can't kind of conflate these two things here and just say like, well, observation and existence, it's all one thing, right? It's just material. There's no actual outside thing that is existence, but or observation. Um, but it's all pure materialism. But you can't really say that, because if that were the case, then why would observing something cause it to the superposition to decay? Why wouldn't the destiny already just be chosen? Why would there have to be this act of choosing? Why would the universe be indeterminate? So you have to pull the observation part out because it is a necessary constituent, even if it can't exist outside of the thing. It's like fucking JB Weld, right? You have to think of observation and existence like the two tubes of the epoxy shit in JB Weld, right? You have them separate, but they don't really do anything outside of each other. It's only when you mix them that they become something, but they when they package it, they don't package the whole thing together, because otherwise you just have a fucking rock. They have to put the observation and the existence separately because you have to mix them to get a thing. And it's not just one thing. JB Weld is not just one goo. It's two goos. That's how it works. Okay. So there's like a dualism then that exists between ideas and material. We know ideas exist. We know materials exist, and we know that there's not one's not just um. It's not just what's the word that I'm trying to think of here? God, I need to write this shit down in my notes when hold on. Eminent. Um, one doesn't just ideas don't just emanate from material, like materials lists would have you believe. It's actually a different fucking thing. Because if ideas and observation, and here I'm using ideas and observation and experience, all kind of, I conflate those terms because they're really kind of the same thing. What I mean is subjective experience. Um, anyway, you, you have the dualism there. Those are separate fucking things, right? Um, the way that you can jump from that kind of dualism, where they're two separate, real, separate, actual, separate things, and one is not just an eminence from the other, then the mind-body problem and the dualism between mind and body is there's one just maps to the other, right? Where the body is just matter and the mind is just ideas. Um, then that's where the dualism is. Both of those things can exist. The ideas have to be separate in order for the matter to be instantiated. They can't. Otherwise, the JB Weld will just come as a puck. And so, in you have both of those things. You have a body and you have a mind. Well, how do those things interact? Because here's the big deal with dualism that where you get people fight against it all the time. And I'm running out of time. I got to get going by 9:40. So we'll see if we can finish this up. We're almost done now. How can I make the jump to dualism when you have these two separate things? You have mind and you have body, and they can't actually interact because they're two different things. If a thing could interact with the matter, then the matter would be matter. Right? Ghosts pass through walls. Well, honestly, my argument on this one, which is a pretty good counter argument. I mean, they're right. You can't say that's the free will problem, right? It's like if I control my body and I'm free to act in there, this is where it all conflicts. It's like, well, how does materialism fit in there too? Because, like, I'm conceding in my worldview that materialism to some degree exists, right? I do say that materials exist when the eigenstate is instantiated, then you get real life particles. Like, if I take this pen and I drop it, it will fall and behave in accordance with the shit that it's made out of and the gravity and all the other stuff in the world. The physics says that it should. So materialism does exist. Like, we are actually all in physical bodies that are more or less part of this, like, giant billiards game where the balls roll around and strike each other, and it's just, we're on rails, right? So how do you, like, square the circle here, and you have the mind in there? Well, the mind, and we can kind of honestly prove this, I'm pretty sure. I'm not a big biology guy, but I'll try to do some research to find some, like, experiments and shit, but the mind's not an active, the deal is that consciousness is, it's reactive and descriptive. It is not active and prescriptive. So what I mean by that is that your conscious experience of the world is not of, like, piloting this mech suit that does what you will it to in this external world. What I contend that it is that it's way more passive than that, actually. And that what you honestly perceive to be free will, which there is some level of free will here, and I'll kind of explain what that is, but not in the sense that we take it to be. This kind of control that you have over your body, that's, like, illusory, right? And it kind of makes sense, because, like, just think about the physics of it. Like, when I reach out and touch a hot stove, or I see a delicious plate of macaroni and cheese at the table over yonder, right? Those stimuli have to be mediated to me somehow, right? And in doing so, like, there's a latency involved. In the case of the mac and cheese, like, the smell, the particles have to move through the air, and the sight of it, like, I have to see it, so the light has to travel from the space there to me, and then when it gets to my eye, then it's not in my brain yet, so, like, electrical signals are going through my nerve, same as when I touch the hot stove, like, the signals go through my nerves to my brain, right? And then even in the brain, like, we know that there are, like, reflexes, right? Like, there is parts of the brain that act independent of conscious, like, perception, so you know that you're gonna pull your hand back, ow, you can say ow, before your mind even apprehends it, right? And by the time that you see the pie, or excuse me, I said pie, the macaroni and cheese, you're already drooling. And what's happening is your body is just telling you a story about what it's already seen and done. When you move out and you're acting on the world, when I move to grab this book, by the time that I am cognating that I'm doing this thing and grabbing and touching this book, I've already done it. Right? And so what my brain tells me is that, oh, you chose to do that, right? Because it makes sense. And in a lot of ways, it's pretty good at guessing what you're about to do, because it's in there all the time. Sometimes it guesses wrong, though. But It's the only way it makes sense. Like, look at optical illusions, right? If I look at the staggered lines here, and they're going to be staggered anyway, excuse me, but for the fact that I'm still learning how to draw on this thing. But if I look at the staggered lines, right, as they are now, we know they're parallel, and yet when I draw them here, they look not parallel. Well, my eye is seeing the image, but then my meat organs see it and tell me some other story. They change it in the way that it's perceived in my mind, such that by the time that I get it in my subjective purview, it's already been fucked with, right? The brain is so good at doing it that the perceptive mind doesn't stand a chance. It's already, we can't see this image for the way that it actually is. So we know that that consciousness is not actively doing things and prescribing onto this outside external world its will. So then what is free will? What do we have free will over? Well, what we have free will over is what we choose to believe about the world, the story that we tell ourselves, you know? When we make choices about stuff, the free will isn't in the body moving to the thing. We're on rails, the body was going to move to the thing anyway. We're just observing. And the mind is always working to patch things up that it always did. And just like the noumenological, phenomenological thing, think of the body as the noumenon. We don't actually ever perceive the body for what it's actually doing. We don't ever know what the subconscious, and not even the subconscious, of the body, that the base stuff is actually wanting and doing, because that's untractable. It's the noumenon. It's the way that the things. It's the if you want to use the Kantian fucking word on thing, it's the fucking ding on seek, right? And so you can really easily kind of just dismiss that counter argument to dualism, that like, well, hey, how can the mind control the body if they're two separate fucking things that can't interact with each other? They're not interacting with each other. Consciousness is not interacting with the body. At least any more than it's just observing it and then taking from those observations and making a story, right? And now that you've gotten rid of that counter argument, really, there's not really much to stand in the way of the fact that fact here now that I really do believe that, boiling down from this admission that the quantum world exists as it does through the empirically gathered evidence that we have, that like, we live in a dualist world. Have a mind, and it's of ideas, and those things are completely and utterly separate, although inextricable, but still separate from the body. So, what then even is consciousness then? Because in this whole talk, we've really talked a lot about what matter is, and it is when you take that superposition, which is, again, it's just the sum of all the destinies, all the Eisenstates. And then when you decompose it, like the matter, it's like inherent, I suppose, because it's there, but it's like drawn from a hat, like it's in preset configurations that you choose from. Well, if consciousness is the dual of it, if it's the yin to fit in the yang, why would the fucking universe be made out of apples on one hand, but then oranges on the other? Squares over here and triangles over there? No. What makes sense is that, like, okay, you have things being instantiated physically and materially, from the pan material. So then why not would consciousness just be then the instantiation and the decay of this, the consciousness, the big consciousness wave, into, from the superposition of all consciousnesses, into an eigenstate, into an eigenconsciousness, into a discrete ego, into me, right? And you. It's probably what seems to be what makes sense, right? And what you have is you have a very similar thing where you have this genesis point, this point of birth, of ego birth, of armoring, as Wilhelm Reich would call it, where you build around yourself this identity that you have, and it's composed of again this configuration of whatever consciousness is, in the same way that whatever material is atoms, you know. But that thing comes into being, it evolves over time and experiences and does the thing. It's like material does the thing. But the material has a half-life, and it's also just built out of energy that at some point, it happens to all material at some point or another, is that it's the energy is the matter is liberated into energy through into heat or electricity or, you know, whatever, through a fucking atom bomb, and it's liberated just into fission or whatever the fuck. So that too is like what death is, right? Like you die, and your eigenstate is liberated back. The energy returns back into the field, consciousness field, to be drawn from again. Just like matter is drawn from the energy field into infinitudes of configurations, presuming that there is an infinitude of time and space for which this to happen. But we know that's probably the case too. I think that's another thing that the book is going to talk about over here, is that we live in this expanding universe where, yes, our little slice of heaven might be dying and past its prime, but or maybe we're in our prime, who knows? But in other parts of the universe, because universe just means everything, so multiverse is a dumb thing, I think, to say, because then that's just the universe. Then the individual universes are just small subsections, and they're not the universe. The universe is the whole thing. Anyway, but our little subsection of the universe might be dead and dying, but other sections of the universe are already dead long ago. And still yet other parts of the universe are young and in their ascendant stage and have not effloresced. So there's an infinitude of time and space for which these dice rolls to happen over and over again in every way and configuration. And more or less a Boltzmann kind of resurrection happens, right? Where eventually this set of, I mean, not only physical state, this body, but you know, the same eigenstate that resolves to my consciousness exists, and then is then picked out of the morass of the giant field to resurrect me once again as I am now here in this place, but also in an infinitude of other similar configurations, and other configurations maybe even where you get one but not the other. You know, this mind, but in like a fucking Squid Man body or whatever. You know, who knows? But there's there's always the time and the space, and if the superposition is just all of the positions and the possibilities, then anything that exists in that formula, even if the possibility of its actualization is approaching zero, if it's non-zero, it happens eventually. So you don't got to worry about it. We'll be resurrected, but in every other Destiny too, where you win the $1,000,000, and all of the bad ones where you get drafted into the war, get malaria or whatever the fuck. So I don't know. That's just my theory on things. So that's the panpsyche. That's the Boltzmann resurrection. And that's all the stuff that I kind of think this kind of drips out of the stuff that's in this brief history of time. Now, again, I have a really kind of troglodytic, rudimentary kind of sense of what quantum physics is. I don't know any of the math. It's all layman stuff, but this book is kind of geared towards me. I'm a dumb guy. And I'm okay with that. I think it'll be fun. It'll be a fun read. Maybe I'll learn something. I don't know. But yeah, that's my kind of my philosophical take on the world. I'm an idealist. I do think that we live in a world of ideas, and that at least for now, I'm backing those things up with my really bad knowledge of how the quantum mechanics works. Yeah, I hope that you guys really enjoyed this talk. Let's see here. So for next stream, and by next stream I mean next book stream, I might do that software one. I wanted to do the one on error codes in C. I think I might do that one still, maybe in a couple days. But the next book one that I'll do, definitely within a week. I think that should be plenty of time to read and come up with the material for another stream. I think what I want to do is probably about 50 pages sounds good. It just so happens to be, at least in my version of the book, this here one that's Bantam. Chapter 3 runs until page 53 is where chapter 4 begins. And again, most of these pages are like big fucking fat big fat pictures, double spaced, no equations or like hard shit. It looks like. I think this will be pretty easy. It should be good. So, why don't we do this next stream? Let's come back. Haven't read chapters. The introduction from Carl Sagan. So it's pretty exciting. And chapters 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. So I'm gonna write that down here. And yeah, hopefully you guys like the format. And maybe I'll get better at one, my handwriting, and two, not writing so cattywampus and slant all the time. I don't know why I do that. Just kind of come up with the right amount of slant on the tablet over here. Anyway, so for next time, we're going to read the intro and chapters 1 through 3. Yeah. Well, yeah, this was fun. I had a lot of fun. I can't believe that I did this stream twice. But I had so much fun doing it the first time that it was a pleasure doing it the second time. I think the second one went better too. So, yeah, hopefully going through this book chapter by chapter, I don't really think that anything like newer revelatory is going to kind of come to me through reading this book. I mean, maybe it will. But I do think that this first kind of introductory stream kind of glossed over a lot of hand wavy, which is really all I can do as an idiot and a pseudo-intellectual is to hand wave over things, but even more than I'd like to. And this is kind of rambly. I'm getting used to this. This is like my first one, so hopefully going through this slower, I can kind of pick some of these big parts apart, talk about them more in depth. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be fun. So, yeah, thank you guys for joining me. I'm gonna have this up on my YouTube channel, so anyone that wasn't here in person, honestly, I don't even know how many people. If you were on this live stream, like, thank you. I appreciate it. I really do. But even if you're watching this after the fact, like, thank you. It's awesome. Let's keep on doing it. Let's philosophize together. Yeah, well, I'm gonna get myself ready for work at the old Planet Fitness. The old Judgment Freeze. And you guys have a good night, and I'll catch you in a couple days.